Every shift is a line battle, and the right or wrong decision made by NHL coaches and their staff can decide a game before the puck even drops. I'm Coach Ryan D, and I'm a high-performance hockey coach with Hockey Canada. Let's decode the mysteries behind line matching at the highest level. Lines in the NHL specifically refer to forwards, defenders we call pairs, and goalies we refer to as starters or backups. We have a left winger, we have a center, and we have a right winger. Yeah, duh. Thanks, coach. Well, these positions have been etched into hockey historians' memories. They really are only a placeholder in today's game for your starting position at the face-off. The game has changed so significantly that here we see the center, we see our left winger, and we see our right winger for the Florida Panthers. But as soon as this puck drops and the players are moving, everything changes. We move from center, left wing, and right wing to forward 1, the forward closest to the puck, forward 2, the supporting forward towards the puck, and forward 3, the supporting forward of the supporting forward closest to the puck. Today's NHL is just far too fast, so forward 1 is always denoted as the forward closest to the puck, as our blue player is here on the forecheck. Forward 2 strategically denotes to the player second closest to the puck, whose job it is to support forward 1. And forward 3 is the furthest away from the puck, whose job it is to support both forward 2 and forward 1 in the play. When you are forechecking on the defensive side, the first forward is the one supporting defenseman 1 in the corner when they don't have the puck. Forward 2 is up high and on the wall, and forward 3 is in the high slot. And once players cause a turnover and they get control of the puck, those positions change. Who was forward 1 may now become forward 2, and who was forward 2 may now become forward 1 on the breakout, and who was forward 3 may remain forward 3. This isn't something you are required to memorize as a fan to enjoy hockey. This is something NHL professionals learn their entire lives and work their way to write their final thesis, their PhD, their dissertation in hockey as a player in the NHL. It's very complicated how they move from the D zone to the neutral zone to the offensive zone, but it puts context in our mind as fans that when coaches are setting and choosing lines, they are not only thinking of roles in position of center, left wing, and right wing, but they are thinking in roles of positions as the game flows, as it beautifully does from end to end, whether you have possession of the puck and you're on offense, or you do not have possession of the puck, meaning you are on defense in any of the 3 zones in hockey. It's a little bit more complex than we as fans sometimes make it out to be. And it is significantly more complex than just putting a left-handed shooter on the left side, a right-handed shooter on the right side, and finding those coveted right-handed centermen to take draws. When we get a whistle, it is the home team's advantage to match up against the visiting team. What does that mean? It means the visiting team has to put out their 5 players and their 3 forwards, denoting a line. Remember, lines are forwards. First, they have 5 seconds to put their personnel on the ice. As soon as the referee's hand goes up, as it does here in this video, this denotes that it's the home team's time to change. They have 5 seconds from this hand going up, and as soon as this hand comes down, you no longer have the opportunity to put your personnel on the ice. You've missed your window. This takes the gamesmanship out of it, and you've heard me talk about the game within the game many times in this series. There are very little games within the game when it comes to line changing. It is very controlled, it is very orderly, although it does not mean that coaches won't be sneaky, but you're going to have to stick around to the end of the video for me to tell you how coaches and players do end up being sneaky on line changes. A better view comes from here. We're always watching the face-off. We're highly unlikely to be watching a referee in such close proximity like we did there. So at this point in time, we see the arm go up, and that denotes it is the home team's time to change. The visiting team is already expected to have their personnel on the ice, and you can see the linesman at the face-off dot. He's not getting ready. He's not tricking players to drop the puck. And as soon as that line goes down, a whistle is not blown by the referee, but the linesman. And this tells players it's time to set up for the face-off. And if you want to know more about face-offs, I got a banging video at the end of this one, but stay tuned. Any player in this moment or coach that tries to sneak a player onto the ice will be ushered right back to the bench. No penalty will be called, But if it's egregious enough or happens multiple times after a coach has been warned, then a delay of game penalty can be called. It's just very unlikely. Now, when it comes to a player's shift length, this isn't the NBA. They can't play the entire game. Most forwards are capable of playing 20 to 28 minutes in a game. In a playoff game, you can get elite players like McDavid and McKinnon up to 28 minutes. But in a regular season game, you'd like your first line to play anywhere between 18 and 23 minutes. The game is hard. You're not going to have your superstars on ice at all times. That's why it is critical to decide as a coach, are you going to spread your talent out amongst 4 lines? Are you going to collect them all on one line? Are you going to play them in pairs? Are you going to keep 3 guys together? Are you going to change lines during the game? What are you going to do when injuries occur? Are you going to play players in the offensive zone when the whistle blows? Or are you going to put out defensive specialists in the defensive zone when the whistle blows and you have the opportunity to change lines? And how does it change when you're the home team versus the visiting team? Well, let's go back to the Florida Panthers. We can see here that you have a top 3, Reinhart, Barkov, and Verhaeghe. You can see you have a top 6, Tkachuk, Bennett, and Rodriguez. You can see you have a top 9, Lindell, Marchand, and Lustarian. And then we finally see our top 12 in the Nozick line. Now, these aren't exactly what you saw in the playoffs. This is the offseason at this point, so these names will have changed. And you'll also see that there's a few things standing out. If you watched the playoffs this year, Rodriguez went up and Verhaeghe went down. It's very common that coaches will change lines, and I like to use the Florida Panthers first because this is an absolute embarrassment of riches. When we're talking about lines and using hockey slang, everybody knows what it means when you say the top 6. It's your line 1 and your line 2. And realistically, in today's NHL, if you want to win a Stanley Cup, you need line 1A and line 1B. Line 2 is almost derogatory at this point when you look at a team this good because either one of these lines can be line 1 or line 2 depending how they're playing that night. But we all know how important the Lundell line was, especially with the addition of Marchand to this team. However, on many NHL squads, they would still be denoted in the bottom 6. We also have the term middle 6, which is to denote players on line 3 and line 2 on teams that we think might be interchangeable with those positions. But realistically, on a team this good, it's just line 4 that stands out. Line 4 has a simple job: eat up 8 to 10 minutes of the game of rest for your top 9 players so they can go out and do damage. Do not get scored on, give rest to your teammates, provide energy, provide checks, sometimes provide a fight. Grinders, power forwards. That is what we're looking for on line 4. Responsible, easy to coach, professional hockey players. But before we can talk about line matching, we have to talk about line composition and how we end up at these places. That's why I'm talking about the depth of the Panthers. Let's move over to the President's Trophy winners, the Winnipeg Jets. Their first line, the most productive line in hockey last year in the regular season, Scheifele, Velarde, and Connor. This line was static. It very rarely changed, but it did change due to injuries, especially when Gabe Velarde was gone. He was actually replaced by a player named Alex Iafallo, who spent most of the time on the 4th line and is considered a gadget player or a plug player, somebody that can plug in at any point in the NHL. And if you really want to be insulting, you can call him a grocery stick. You know those sticks that sit behind your groceries when you're separating your purchases from your friends? It really doesn't do anything, so it's a derogatory term to denote a player that never gets off the bench and just separates the forwards and the defensemen. Pretty funny term. Call your buddy a grocery stick if you want to rip him. But I picked the Winnipeg Jets and the Florida Panthers because they have contrarian styles when it comes to attaching players to lines. The Winnipeg Jets have a 3rd line built on checking, the Adam Lowry line. Lowry, Nino Niederreiter, Mason Appleton, who will be replaced this year with a different player. Their focus was on taking away the team's best. When it comes to line matching, there are a few things you have to put together. Not only your team strategy based on the hand you're dealt, the players and the talent you have, but more importantly, what Paul Maurice says here.
The matchup, the other team has the advantage, and then I'll play with it. I will tell you that, in each, before each season, I kind of go around to the team and ask the players what they like about the culture of our room. And one of Matthew Tkachuk's comments was he loves the fact that everybody doesn't care who they play with. They can play with any. And he leads that. He truly doesn't care who he plays with. Loves playing with Sam Bennett, but you're playing with anybody.
The culture of the room of the defending Stanley Cup champions, as per Matthew Tkachuk to his coach Paul Maurice, is that he loves the fact that everybody is willing to play with each other. These are the things a coach has to decipher that we as fans have no privilege to. There are many players who refuse to play away from their position. There are many players who refuse to play anything but line 1, line 2, or possibly even line 3. There are many players who refuse to play without certain types of players. When you have a team as versatile as the Florida Panthers culturally, where the players enjoy each other, they want to play on each other's lines, and they don't care if they get moved around. They don't care if they're line 3. Brad Marchand, Stanley Cup winner, captain of the Bruins, Team Canada player, line 3, could have come into that room and demanded line 2, line 1. But he didn't. He's a leader, and because of the culture that was already built for the Panthers, he finds it okay going to line 3 and sees it a compliment playing with players as good as E2 and Lundell. I think most people actually expected that he would have played in the line 2 role with a rat line of Bennett and Tkachuk, but he didn't. And we can see here how good of a decision that was. Not only did that line play the most amount of minutes together, but they are absolute powerhouses with 3.71 goals per 60 minutes. That's 13 goals for and 4 goals against. But you'll notice something else. What's going on here? Why so much mixing and matching? And that's because the Florida Panthers do something also interesting. And let's let Paul Maurice answer that question for us again.
And I got a pretty good idea of what each line looks like. My job then is to find out when it's not working. So Verhaeghe moves between Barkov and Bennett, and that's my job, is to figure out when it's stale or the matchup, the other team has the advantage, and then I'll play with it.
So as you heard it from the man himself, it is his job to move Verhaeghe and Rodriguez between certain lines, and that's exactly what we see. Here's Verhaeghe, Barkov, and Reinhart. The consistency here is Barkov and Reinhart, 156 minutes, 8 goals for, 9 against. But in the championship final, it was Rodriguez, Barkov, and Reinhart, and we see their fortunes change as 4 goals for, 1 against, a significantly more successful line. And we see that for Verhaeghe as well. As soon as Verhaeghe moves to the Bennett line, they go 10 goals, 5 against. And we see when Bennett, Tkachuk, and Rodriguez played together, they actually went 500, 3 for 3. And Paul talks about all the little intricacies that drove that decision. I think the term he used was stale. When it isn't working, he has to find a way to change it up. But the consistency for the champions in every team is different. But the consistency for the champions is that they run their lines in pairs. Lundell plays with Ustarian. They have for some time. The third man on the team is expected to follow the culture that Lundell sets. Bennett and Tkachuk play together. We all know about the culture of Bennett and Tkachuk. They must play the way Bennett and Tkachuk need them to play, which necessarily isn't physical. It's actually a finisher, which is why Verhaeghe plays so well with those two. You need a scoring touch for two muckers that are going to go in and throw bodies. Not that Tkachuk and Bennett can't score, they can, but the talent and the offensive prowess, the east-west nature of Verhaeghe unlocks the ability for Bennett and Tkachuk to muck down low and in the corners and terrorize opponents with hits and plays, while Verhaeghe gets open, gets forgotten about, and puts goals in the back of the nets. Barkov and Reinhart are heavily defensive forwards. They're super responsible, Selke winners in their own right, and they match up against the team's best, and they can take away guys just as good as Draisaitl and McDavid like that, and they can score on you as well, which is why having more of a role player with speed that plays north-south unlocks those two. Defensive players tend to play down low, closer to boards. A physical game, they check. They're puck hounds. You need someone to release pressure as soon as you turn over that puck. Rodriguez's job is to be that pressure release north-south and let him score. But another team that's worth talking about opens up a completely different strategy, and it's the Dallas Stars. Now, Peter DeBoer isn't there anymore. He's been fired, but his deployment of Mikko Rantanen was fascinating. A playoff darling, a player that was brought in at the trade deadline that wasn't producing with the Carolina Hurricanes for reasons that he did not match with that team's system or line chemistry. But boy, howdy, did he hit in Dallas. And we can see in the playoffs, Rantanen was deployed with 6 different line combinations, causing an absolute nightmare for the Winnipeg Jets. Rantanen played most of his time with Hintz and Granlund, but he spent time with Wyatt Johnson and Jason Robertson. He spent time with Wyatt Johnson and Jamie Benn. He spent time with Wyatt Johnson and Granlund. He spent time with Hintz and Robertson, and he spent time with Granlund and Robertson. And don't let these small totals fool you. If a shift is 45 seconds, that is still a lot of time in a short playoff series. We can see he was productive enough, or the line was productive enough when he was with Hintz and Granlund. We can see with Robertson and Johnson, it was no harm, no foul, but it wasn't explosive. It was 1 goal, 0 against, which is good. When he played with Jamie Benn and Wyatt Johnson, it was only 1 goal against. When he played with Johnson and Granlund, there was 0 production. And when he played with Robertson, Hintz, and Robertson and Granlund, well, he was -2. And this is for 2 key reasons. Number 1, when you're playing against a team like the President's Trophy winning Winnipeg Jets, they have a third line that I mentioned. It's the Lowry line. They take away the team's best players. But here's the problem with a checking third line instead of a scoring third line. Obviously, you want them to do both, but we don't get that privilege in the NHL. There are only so many Barkovs and Reinhardts to go around that do both. So you put a defensive specialist like Adam Lowry and co. on a player like Mikko Rantanen. Well, if you want to open up Mikko Rantanen, switch him between every line, because when do you put Adam Lowry out? That line is static. It never changes for the Winnipeg Jets. So regardless of if Lowry is the visiting team or the home team, having first change or second change, Mikko Rantanen just changes lines. And then that forces Adam Lowry to get there out on the ice, whether it's a change on the fly or a change at a static whistle. And then Rantanen just floats off and comes back and plays with somebody else, and you've wasted the defensive specialist that is Adam Lowry. It can be a massive headache, and it is one big reason why the Dallas Stars beat the Winnipeg Jets this year. DeBoer out-coached Scott Arniel. But sometimes it's not fair to put that on Arniel because, frankly, what choice could he have made? Every coach would love to match line 1 with line 1. That is how I play. As a coach, I actually don't like to put defensive specialists out against offensive players. I will do it in the defensive zone. If I have an opportunity to put my best defensive players against their best offensive players in the defensive zone after a whistle, I will make that change if I have home ice advantage. But I am consciously aware of what I am doing. I'm getting my offensive players and my number 1 line, sometimes my 2 number 1 lines, remember line 1A, line 1B, out of the flow of the game, and I am keeping my best players off the ice. Defense is very important in hockey, but offense at this point in time in the NHL is arguably 2 or 3 times more important than defensive hockey. That's why we see so many teams stacking up offensive and skilled players around their top 9, as you would want to talk about them. But sometimes you don't get that luxury, so you have to put a defensive specialist out there, and they can be valuable, but the challenge is they're never going to outscore a goal that they may allow. So if you have defensive specialists lined up against the other team's line 1, isn't your line 3 that is a defensive specialist arguably just playing line 1 minutes? That's no good. You need line 1 playing line 1 minutes. They're your best line for a reason, which is why I always like deploying line 1 against line 1, even in the defensive zone. But once again, back to the Florida Panthers and their embarrassment of riches, this is what made their line 3 so potent. They are defensively responsible and offensively explosive. They're a unicorn. This is Brad Marchand and Lundell. They lose the draw to the Edmonton Oilers. Evan Bouchard is on the ice, the $10 million man. And it's Bouchard and the Oilers that allow Marchand to go 200 feet and put it in the back of the net. You can score from the defensive zone in less than a second and a half in hockey. So yes, putting out defensive specialist against offensive specialists can seem like a good idea, but there is an argument to be made to put out your best offense as a good defense in your own D zone. Coaches have to decide this before they go into the game, and they have to think about this based on the flow of the game and what they know about their players. And Mikko Rantanen himself, an absolute unicorn. I mean, really, when you have a player this talented that can walk in, bang, snap shots like this, and he has the confidence and willingness to play with so many different line combinations, it will terrorize opposing teams. So there you have it. It comes down to so many intricacies and so many pieces. It really is a coach with years of professional and amateur level experience, thousands to tens of thousands of hours in player meetings, getting to know his players, understanding the intricacies and the details of what makes his players play. Also, he can put them in the best position to produce. But there's always that fight between players who think they may know better than the coach and want to produce their own way. That's like every employee, every friend, every person you've known. It's the human condition. And coaches need to be aware of that, and sometimes they get hamstrung by it. And listen to Paul Maurice here tell you exactly what his job is.
And so that's my job, right? Put players in a position to produce.
His job is to put players in a position to produce, and boy, did they produce for him. So no matter what our opinion is, no matter what we see, it is almost too complex of a topic for us to really dissect. We could go team by team, but we would be here for hundreds of hours. Now, I said I'd give you a little bit of a bonus of what players do to cheat the system. Well, NHL players, for instance, on an icing, watch one of them. They'll change. They will force a referee to call their number, put them back on the ice, and consume 30 to 40 seconds of rest for their team that wasn't allowed to change. Oopsie doodle, didn't know the rule. They will lean into certain tactics like this. They will jump the bench slightly earlier, or my personal favorite, usually run by an assistant coach, they will put a player out on the ice. He will get caught in the scrum of people changing. They will take him off the ice and get a different player out there if you are the visiting team. It is called a carousel at a bench. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any of these clips because cameras rarely pick it off, but these are tactics we do as coaches, and we have done at all levels. It's just ways to sneak players onto the ice and get the line matches that you want. There are legitimate ways to do it as well, too. You will put out a draw man to take a draw. They will win a draw, and their job is to get off the ice immediately to get you the line matchup you want. These are tips and tricks you can do when you are a visiting coach and do not get the home ice change. And trust me, we do everything we can as a visiting coach to absolutely drive the home ice coach mad and borderline at times get referees a little bit fired up at us, almost to the point of a warning when big games are on the line. Not every coach, but the ones who are tactical, charming, sometimes a little bit sneaky are able to do it. So watch closely to your favorite NHL teams as they are doing it, because the tricks of the trade will always be out there, the game within the game. I hope this has better help you understand the idea of lines, line combination, and line changes. And if you took away anything from this video, it's that it's hyper complex and it's best left to qualified NHL personnel, but it's also the best thing we like to talk about. So when we say, what are you adjusting for next game? Maybe we should be adjusting the strategy as opposed to the lines, and leave the lines to the professionals. Although I know you, me, and the media won't. Check out this video on face-offs if you like this one, if you want to learn all of the NHL's sneakiest secrets to scoring goals 200 feet away from their net. If you want to see the NHL secret to scoring goals 200 feet away from the opponent's goalie.